Nantucket, whose name means faraway island, is 30 miles out to sea, 14 miles long and 3.5 miles wide. Since 1975, the entire island has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Unique in the nation, Nantucket is a living community of over 800 pre-Civil War homes. Due to far-sighted conservation restrictions, over 50% of the island will remain open and undeveloped for all to enjoy. Jews came to the island late. The presence of a few Jews was first recorded in the 1870s, and not one stayed longer than 10 years. It was only in the beginning of the 20th century that Jews established a foothold here, 300 years after the first English settlers arrived. Shirat HaYam was established in July of 1983. Relying on historical documents and personal recollections, this is the story of Shirat HaYam's first 30 years, and celebrates the vibrant and thriving synagogue that Shirat HaYam is today. In the 1920s, a handful of Jewish families firmly established businesses and professional careers on the island. They included Dr. Jacob Fine, who was dedicated to improving surgical procedures at the Nantucket Cottage Hospital, and whose unpublished manuscript, The Nantucket Story, recreates a record of personalities and reminiscences of the time. Many Jewish businesses started in the 20s have passed through multiple generations and are alive and well today. For example, Emil Geneski, whose daughter Joan Rubin still lives in the Geneski summer residence, managed the family's many enterprises, including the Dreamland movie theater. The Levines opened the Nobby shop, and their nephew Morgan Levine subsequently owned the Four Winds gift shop and the Four Winds Craft Guild. Congregant Marcia Rubin and her late husband Harold have owned the historic building that houses the Four Winds for almost 40 years. Their son PJ now owns the gift shop, and daughter Emily Brooke Rubin designs and sells her jewelry in shops of her own. Simon and Rose Kaufman created and nurtured the whole community by their many acts of kindness at Size Green Coffee Pot, later run by their daughter Zelda and husband Milton Zloten. To everyone's delight, Zelda published a book of recipes when the restaurant closed in 1978.
It was famous in many ways because in the summertime when the maids had time off, there were a number of maids, they could come to the restaurant and feel comfortable.
There was always one or two who would take me by the hand and say, your grandparents and your parents always opened their restaurant to us, and other restaurants didn't when we first started coming here.
According to Fran Kartunen in The Other Islanders, a low level of anti-Semitism affected the lives of Jewish residents and Jewish office workers who came on summer holiday. Even so, more families began to spend their summers on the island and expressed the desire to celebrate Jewish rituals with others.
I could see that there was a kind of inchoate desire at that time for a sense of community. I think we're all here in Nantucket because we love it, but in those days at least, there was an element to the culture that we weren't entirely, we were comfortable with it, but it didn't nourish everything that we were, I think. And so I think there was a kind of, what do you call it, a perfect storm of a desire to function as a community, within a community, that came together.
My late wife, Sarah, had grown up in a town that she always referred to as a shtetl. It was in upstate New York, in the Borscht Belt. It was called Mountaindale. And she missed that Jewish life. And so she wanted to have a temple here, or some Jewish presence.
The first service was planned for July 1983. It all started with a phone call from Sarah Levine to Claire Maitino, who, along with her husband Michael, took over the Val Maitino antique shop, started by Michael's father in the 1950s.
The first service, we sent out a little notice, don't know where, and invited people to come, probably a note in the paper, the Inquirer and Mirror. And we thought we might get 20 people if we're lucky. Well, when the door opened, we had over 100 people. We were astounded.
We really thought we were one of maybe 4 families, and there were many people who had intermarried who didn't identify themselves as being Jewish who showed up at that first service.
So we'd walk down the street and we'd see these people and we'd say, who looked like they were walking there, and we'd say, is he Jewish? Is she Jewish?
I remember the Grange Hall was swarming with mosquitoes, and there was a gas heater that hung from the ceiling, which was, as we recited the Aleinu and turned to face east, there we were, in effect, substituting it for the ark, as we were all reciting the Aleinu to the gas heater hanging from the ceiling there. But it was astonishing, though, to be there and to see the kinds of people who showed up, and their eyes widen as they realized that they were brethren and people you would never have dreamed were Jewish.
And so it was decided we must have a congregation, and of course you had to have a president. And so they all said I should be president, though I had no experience.
The congregation celebrated its first high holiday service September 1983. 200 people, led by Rabbi Richard Davis, attended services at the Congregational Church. Tashlish at Brent Point followed services on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, a tradition that continues to this day. Even the New York Times noted the beginnings of Shirat HaYam.
For Rosh Hashanah, one of the early, really, I don't want to say fun experiences, but what was Tashlik at Grand Point. I don't know if you talked about that. That would draw huge, lots of people coming down there, feeding the gulls.
During the first year, the congregation built a sukkah, held Hanukkah and Purim parties, traditions that continue today. The first teacher, Rabbi Joseph Pollock, devised a program of study for adults, while his wife, Razel, taught Hebrew classes. Services were held on Friday evening and Saturday morning. The first community Seder was held. Officers were elected and bylaws written. However, during that first year, a fundamental rift occurred, dividing those who wanted to undertake a rigorous commitment to Judaism and those whose approach was more casual. The original name, the Nantucket Jewish Community Organization, was maintained by the latter group, who for a short time had their own newsletter and collected dues before they closed their doors and turned over their financial resources to Shirat HaYam.
They joined together with Morgan Levine and decided that there would be one congregation. There were others trying, and they formed this congregation and got going.
Although Rabbi Pollock's impact was immeasurable, he served for only 2 years. The congregation was dependent upon visiting rabbis. That included Susan and Dennis Shapiro's son, Rabbi Zachary Shapiro, and lay leaders to lead Friday night services. In particular, fellow congregant Leonard Greenberg was often called on to officiate. He was instrumental in organizing high holiday services and instituted the well-attended weekly study sessions, Tuesdays with Leonard.
I undertook to help people find Judaism by teaching them according to Rabbi Heschel. I have a master's degree in Jewish philosophy.
It would be laid back enough so that aliyahs would be given out by Leonard Greenberg, and he would have a strip with a page and the first words of whatever you'd say. And as you walked in, you would be handed your aliyah. And, you know, he might just tap you on the shoulder and say, would you read the next passage?
Well, we're not affiliated with any of the major governing bodies of the branches of Judaism, like the Hebrew Union or the Jewish Theological Seminary or anything like that. We're not conservative, we're not Reform, we're not Orthodox, but we have or Reconstructionist. We have members who are from all branches of belief.
Irving Rosenthal, a professor of journalism at City College in New York, served as president of the congregation for 7 years, from 1987 until 1994. He engaged the congregation during services with thoughtful dialogue and song, and created a service that was intimate, inclusive, and joyful.
He gave some of the best services you've ever heard. As a lay leader, it was remarkable, and it was magnetic. It drew people in.
And I think that people felt it was very inclusive, and because he was a person of words and writing, I think he was probably I know he was very articulate, and he also had a beautiful voice.
Children's religious school classes began in 1990. Educator and cantor Avi Tekken was hired in 1999 to formalize the curriculum and teach. He has since supervised 11 bar and bat mitzvahs. The Dixon children were the congregation's first bat and bar mitzvah. Aaron in 1993 and Brother Graham in 1996.
In the very beginning, I would say that Sunday school basically was cooking and singing. My children were bar and bat mitzvahed. That was huge in that we reached out to people that I didn't know very well, who embraced the concept and made us feel like we were doing the most important thing for the congregation that could be done. And that was huge.
Oh, easily most proud of the Hebrew school that we offer the children on the island, tuition free. And the congregation has bought into that from the beginning. But it's something that we all want to do, want to have done. And I think looking to the future, that really is one of the best things we can do.
The nice part also is that the community has been very welcoming. As our daughter grew up, our daughter will be 11 this summer, so basically she's been with the congregation over a third of its life, because so many of the congregants have watched her grow up, and that to me is part of what Judaism is about. It's being involved in family and community.
I think what is good about the Jewish community here is that there are other people who are trying to do the same thing, so there are sharing your experience and participating in it, that when you reach out, there are hands to hold.
I think it's been fantastic. Avi runs what is, for all purposes, a one-room schoolhouse. He has kids from 5 through bar bat mitzvah age, and he manages to work with all of them, and he recognizes each child for the strengths they bring, and he really does a very nice job.
I believe in excellence in teaching and in bringing the best possible out of each and every kid that I work with. Now, in Nantucket, it is a double challenge because the group is relatively small. Every kid is extremely important to the fabric of the school, to the group dynamics, and to each other.
The congregation was guided in the 1990s by 2 rabbis in particular. Rabbi Steve Shaw's informal style and concern for the natural environment is remembered by congregant Myra Fine. who recalls, "He was fond of hiking, birding, and camping, which he did in activity-appropriate clothes, a Jewish LL Bean." And Rabbi Rachel Sabbath, who began her long association with Shirat HaYam in 1996, at first leading high holiday services. That same year, a formal agreement was reached with the Unitarian Church to use Hendricks Hall as its permanent sanctuary. The congregation now had a spiritual home. The signature Friday night speakers program continues the early commitment of introducing prominent Jewish thinkers, journalists, authors, and politicians to the community. They include Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Vermont Governor Madeleine Kunin, Ron Goldman's father, Fred Goldman, and David Gregory, among many others.
Robin Bernstein put together an extensive speakers program, which has been subsequently followed through by Susan Hockwald, who's also done a fabulous job. And so the speakers would be listed, and we'd pick and choose what we'd go to see. Wolf Blitzer, Thomas Friedman.
The whole point of the speaker program is really to demonstrate what the Jewish people contribute to the world and to us as Americans. So we have scientists, politicians, journalists, writers, entertainers, people from all over the world, actually, who will come and love to come here.
In addition to voluntary membership fees, the congregation raises money from the sale of scrim-shanded mezuzot and Nantucket red yarmulkes, embroidered in the round by what else? Wales. Island artist David Lazarus worked for Morgan Levine in his shop. Together they developed the mezuzah and yarmulke. Well, that's a charming tale.
The second year, one of our speakers looked out at the audience and he said, "Oh, I thought I'd seen Nantucket red yarmulkes with whales on it." There was a woman here from Montreal in the clothing business, Harriet Lepler, and she was the one that came up with our yarmulkes, managed to produce them. And that's been a great seller for us.
In 1998, Shirat HaYam became active in the broader community, joining the Interfaith Council and contributing time and resources to the Council's food pantry and rental assistance program. In honor of the 30th anniversary, the congregation replaced 2 ailing trees from the 1800s with new American elms in front of the Pacific National Bank. Partnering with others, the congregation has co-sponsored events with the Athenaeum and the Nantucket Book Festival, and helped raise funds for the South Church Preservation Fund.
This Jewish community has made a supreme effort to reach out to people and to be proud of being a presence on Nantucket, and I think that has that's an important aspect of our living here. I feel more comfortable because of it, and I think that it's a real growth.
Our food pantry serves 400 families a week on Nantucket, and so we are feeding thousands of mouths through the years, and that kind of became our thing. And of course, it's a joke, you know, we're the Jews, so we do the food.
We were there to help people. Not only to help Jews, but to help all people, because that's part of what we all believe in, and we shouldn't forget.
The community itself has become more, and again, tolerant might be too strong a word, but accepting and welcoming of all kinds of cultures, and you know, the Jewish organization as well.
I think the spirit of Nantucket has always been religion, which was part of why the United States was started. Everybody wanted to practice their religion. And here on Nantucket, because it's an island, you have many different faiths practicing in a small area, and everybody shares their facilities. and their energy. And I think that Shirat HaYam has made huge contributions to the community and speaks well for the members.
Led by Milton Zlotin and Jean Ratner, the Nantucket Jewish Cemetery Association was founded in 1987. Since then, recognizing a growing need, an additional section has been added to serve the needs of interfaith Jewish families.
The ability to have your final resting place be, one of the most important places in your life. Sorry. And Daddy just, he talked about it, and of course that was before Google, he just was extremely intelligent and just found out what you needed to find out, and he worked the contract so that anyone who has a plot there, the families don't have to pay every year. And I remember him talking to me about that, talking for weeks about finding the right hedges, because it has to be the living hedge, that follows the Jewish, requirements to go around the cemetery.
I'm very involved in the cemetery because we have a daughter who was buried there, and it matters to me a great deal. And my heart is there, so I'm very involved in that and interested in keeping it the peaceful, serene, lovely spot it is.
They just loved Nantucket so much, and this is their eternal resting place. We just knew this is where they felt the most at home with the community.
Today, many more than a few Jews live or just vacation on Nantucket. The congregation includes over 200 families and meets every Friday night from Memorial Day through the high holidays. The sanctuary is typically filled with both congregants and island visitors. The summer calendar includes films, concerts, art, and weekend-long sessions with invited scholars. During the winter months, families often celebrate holidays together and share their traditions with the larger Nantucket community. For the past 6 years, Rabbi Judith Edelstein and cantorial soloist Elliot Levine have recently led high holiday services, soulfully accompanied on the clarinet by Howard Bloom and cellist Molly Glazier on Kol Nidre. Services are pluralistic and open to all. Tickets are not required. July 19, 2013. It is early evening, and members of Congregation Shirat HaYam are gathering for a special Shabbat service to celebrate their 30th anniversary. Thanks to the vision of congregant Esther Lee Stone, a new sign has been affixed and prominently displayed on the front of the Unitarian Meeting House, where Shirat HaYam holds its services and conducts its religious school. It is an announcement to all that the congregation proudly exists, joining other Nantucket religious institutions.
After 30 years, it's so rewarding to finally be recognized officially with a sign. It is so appropriate to have Rabbi Kushner here because he is the one who suggested the name, Congregation Shirat HaYam, Song of the Sea.
The name Shirat HaYam comes from the 15th chapter of the book of Exodus, and it's a long poem that's ascribed to Moses, and it's what he sang as the children of Israel were at the sea.
The 30th anniversary Shabbat service, arranged by current President Sue Bloom, featured a tribute to Shirat HaYam's past presidents. Those in attendance included Morgan Levine, Robin Bernstein, Howard Blitman, Susan Hochwald, Leslie Schreiberg, John Goldman, and Larry Levine. This past winter, the Board of Directors announced that well-known lecturer, author, and expert on interfaith relations, Rabbi Gary Breton Granitor, will serve as Shirat HaYam's year-round spiritual guide.
This congregation has really become a part of our family. We feel a part of it. It's certainly part of our life. So it's very exciting to be here. And it was very special to be here with all of the past presidents that could make it tonight. That made it kind of real.
I think it's wonderful that they've been here 30 years and their growing presence and participation in the community will ensure that they will continue to be a part of Nantucket.
I'd like to see it continue to grow. I think that it brings the Jewish people that are in Nantucket close together.
I believe the congregation and the past presidents have just done a wonderful job of bringing this whole congregation together, and the speakers that we have and the interest that everyone has shown in it has just been marvelous.
To have a small but vibrant synagogue in our midst, which is quite unexpected when we first learned about it, is just terrific. It adds a special feature to a special place.
I'm pleased at where we've come from, and I'm very optimistic about where we will go in the future.
He brought the rabbi, and it was a miracle.
Well, I think it's a marvelous occasion to celebrate, and we're pleased to be members here.
I think 30 is just the starting point. Hopefully we'll be able to reach out and bring even more people in. So I think I see it going forever.
I think the big message is, A, congratulations for those who've come before us. They carried the torch, and now it's passing on to the next group of us, and we need to take it forward.
That the experience of being a member at Shirat HaYam enriches Eileen's and my life on the island immeasurably, both spiritually and socially. And it's just a fabulous institution, and long may it live.
Let's not just think about tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, but let's sort of dream about the future and think 5, 10, 20 years, and think about the next generation and what we can do for the future of the Nantucket Jewish community.